What's going on, family? Welcome back to Israel's Movie Reviews. And today we're going to be discussing 2019's Joker. Man, this movie was a very tough watch. Not because it was bad or anything like that, but because this movie really touched you in places where you didn't think a DC or just a comic book movie in general would take you. This movie, in my point of view, wasn't typically a comic book movie. It was basically a character development, a character contrived movie. Man, Joaquin Phoenix definitely brought his A game in this movie, and I'm surprised he even wanted to do this movie. From the likes of it, when I heard this movie was in production, man, he had to go through a lot. Had to lose some weight, and you could tell he lost a lot of weight in this role. He really dived head deep in this role. Him and DeNiro definitely had chemistry or good connection, especially towards the end of this film. This movie is gonna blow you away, and I don't usually go in depth in my reviews because I want you to go ahead and see it. But we're gonna have a small discussion about this film, and I'm gonna spoil you a few things because I think it needs to be said. You know, movies like this definitely invoke conversation, change, and it's definitely shedding a light that needs to be shed. You know, and let's go straight into it. First of all, kudos to Todd Phillips. I think he directed the hell out of this film. I think he really got the point across. Him teaming up with Joaquin Phoenix, I think, was a match made in heaven. There was a reason this movie made $1 billion in the box office. And with that being said, let's get straight into the review. I believe right out of the gate, you can forget about considering this a comic book movie. It may be based on a comic book character, but the character development and storyline can be taken right from the pages of a modern day horror book or horror movie. All the horrors brought about poverty, abusive parents, disrespectful authority, the distance between the haves and have-nots, and an uncaring society at large, which we deal with every day, especially me. Coming from New York, I've seen it all my life. With a plot that often is structured on ambiguity, the film explores the troubled mind of author Fleck, aka the Joker, who he later becomes. And this movie, he was brilliantly played by Joaquin Phoenix in what may eventually go down as his crowning achievement of his career. And he's played great characters in some awesome movies. No offense intended to Jokers who have gone before, which there were a few great ones, and we'll get into that later on. But Phoenix's take on this character now becomes the standard for what others are going to follow in the future. Obviously, it's not going to be the first or last time we see a Joker on screen, because there are multiple ones, with Jared Leto also being a current one at the same time. But this one definitely separates them, and by a large margin. And man, it's virtually impossible to match the intensity, the drive that this character had. I gotta say, the hype engendered by the film prior to its release, relative to the amount of violence portrayed, appears to be seriously overstated in this. Yes, there's violence on Arthur Fleck's part. You know, he's, man, a character to definitely see. All of it is gruesome, but it virtually pales in comparison with one might experience in any chapter of the Saw series, for example, or any number of slasher or gore flick that rely on buckets and buckets of blood to entertain fans of that persuasion. You know, together, director Todd Phillips and Phoenix created a complex character and a complex film dealing with the horrific and sordid side of mental illness that finds its release in savage, sociopathic behavior. Though maybe called the Joker, as Arthur Fleck himself would surely attest, no one's laughing in this matter. Wow. From the likes of Cesar Romero, the first Joker, Jack Nicholson, Mark Hamill, who portrays the voice of Joker in the cartoon, Heath Ledger, may he rest in peace, who's considered one of the best in the last 10, 12 years, Jared Leto, Zach Galifianakis, the iconic Batman CD Comics character remains a highly distinctive and challenging role. And this stands alone, not part of the DC Extended Universe, and there was no sequel planned until recently, where there is going to be a sequel. It explores his origins. And this movie, from Oscar nominations to BAFTA, Golden Globe, nominated director Todd Phillips, who also directed Road Trip, The Hangover, War Dogs. This movie was basically set in 1981. Gotham City, socially inept and mentally troubled Arthur Fleck, played by Phoenix, works as a clown for hire for a company called Ha-Ha's. And that's ironic because although he's a clown and he's work for hire, you see from the start of the film, and I'm gonna get into some spoiler territory now, that there's no ha-ha moment at all. The movie starts off very grim. You see he's trying to put on a smile, but he really can't. You could tell he's frustrated with the job. You could tell mentally he's not all there, you know? And we're definitely gonna get into it. There are scenes where they feel a little off place because you wonder, is this really happening or is this in his mind? The whole movie, you're telling yourself that, you're asking yourself that all the way up to the end. And he aspires to be a stand-up comedian, like his television hero, comic and talk show host Murray Franklin, played by Robert DeNiro, who played an awesome job. Arthur, at this time, lives with his mother, and where he lives, it's a place of crime, unemployment, and it's very ugly. You know, you could tell he's not in the best living situation. His mother's not all up there either. And he suffers from a disorder that causes him to laugh at inappropriate times, which makes this such a delight because, you know, when things get dark and gritty, you can tell he starts laughing. And it's no laughing matter to what he's laughing at. But since he has that condition and he's so overwhelmed with the laughter because he's scared, he's nervous, you know, people tend not to take him serious. And he depends on social services for medication. And being from the medical field back most of my adulthood, I know how, I know what being on social services is. I've seen people on it and I see what it does. And he's disregarded and mistreated by society. You know, most people don't understand mental illness. Most people don't understand why people take meds. You know, sometimes by taking these meds, they're able to continue and support and be a part of society. Without those meds, it's impossible for them to even just get up. And man, this movie, it really puts you to think. Not only he's mistreated, but he eventually gets attacked in an alley by a gang of men that, teenagers actually, while he's working, they end up stealing a sign that he's using. He goes back to his job. His job doesn't really give a fuck. And on top of that, they expect him to come up with the money to pay for the sign after it was stolen from him, after he was beaten up. What kind of job was that? And that leads him to a coworker actually giving him a gun. And Arthur invites his neighbor, who he has a crazy crush on, who's a single mother, to his debut stand-up comedy performance as he begins dating, or at least in his mind, right? And while entertaining at a children's hospital, as a clown, his gun falls out of his pocket, and subsequently he's fired. Randall lies that the one that provided him with the gun, that he bought the gun himself, eventually to his termination. On the subway back home, after having a miserable day, he's still in his clown makeup. Arthur is eventually beaten up by 3 drunken men who work for Wayne Enterprises. And if you know anything about the comics, Wayne Enterprises, these are guys with money. So at that point, I thought about it. I was like, wait a minute. These are 3 drunken men who have money, who are taking the train. I don't understand it. That's one issue in the story, but that's minor. These men start to disrespect him, start to verbally assault him, and eventually start putting hands on him. And he takes out the gun and shoots 2 of the men in self-defense, and then eventually executes the 3rd. The murders are condemned by the billionaire Thomas Wayne, a candidate to become mayor of the city. He labels those envious of more successful people as clowns, which was interesting because there's demonstrations against Gotham's rich, and it becomes that social dynamic, the rich against the poor. And it's crazy. I'm not gonna go ahead and get deeper in the story because I don't want to spoil the movie basically for you, but I want you to see the way it goes, the way this story ends up taking you. You know, he ends up losing his job. He ends up, in his mind, meeting his idol, getting with his crush, losing out on his psychiatrist, which means that he's gonna lose out on his drugs, and he ends up killing 3 people. In this shorter period of time, you can tell his life is going out of control. It's out of control. His relationship with his mother is not the best because there's some things that are hidden from him from childhood. And you start to think, you're like, wow. Overall, this movie becomes very, very controversial. It ends up very dark with its crime elements, moments of violence and brutality. And this was very depressing at times to watch, but it was good for us to watch because, man, people go through this every day, every second, every moment of the day, and it's uncomfortable. And what else would you expect? It's gritty. It's a great psychological thriller. I'm happy that it won the Oscar for Best Original Score, and it was nominated for Best Motion Picture of the Year, Best Adapted Screenplay for Tom Phillips and Scott River, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, the Best Film Editing, Best Sound and Mixing, Best Sound Editing, and it won the BAFTAs for Original Music and Best Casting, which we can't complain at all with those. And it was nominated for Best Film and Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Production Design, and it also won a Golden Globe for Best Original Score, and it was nominated for Best Motion Picture in Drama, which, hands down, it definitely deserved. This movie was one of those that if you go hoping for a fun film and a comically villainous lead, you're in for quite a shock. You know, this may be centered around a famous DC comic creation, but Batman, there's no Batman in this film. You see Bruce Wayne as a child. If you know anything about Joker and Batman, definitely have a huge age gap. And this brings you to why he has such a thing for Batman, why he puts him through the things he puts him through in the future, and why he doesn't want to kill him. This movie definitely teases that. You know, most viewers that aren't familiar with the movie are going to think that it's unrelated to the world of Batman. And this movie, if you take out that concept, that DC concept, this movie is basically just a character study. You know, the film, with that gritty feel, I don't think could be told any better than what it was. We see New York in the 70s. We see the Warner Brother logo graffitied in the subway train, you know, and cars, TVs, indoor smoking, and general decor. This is a film very similar to The King of Comedy. So much that Robert DeNiro himself plays Murray Franklin. And there are no supervillains or heroes here, just a man who's becoming increasingly dangerous and out of control. There isn't a large amount of violence where it's like any other movie, like a John Wick where it's violent but fun. No, this movie, it really gets to your head. The violence that he commits and that's committed to him in this movie are brutal, shocking, and they feel very real. Overall, I definitely recommend this to anybody wanting a gritty character study. Do not be put off. If you aren't a fan of comic book films, take that out of it, because this is not like your typical comic book film at all. It's not. And it's far from a typical example as it possibly could be. So definitely go check this out. I saw this movie twice in the theater and came out both times in awe. This movie, to me, personally, is a 9.5 out of 10. And you should definitely go watch it. Joaquin Phoenix, role of a lifetime. If you like this video, hit that like button, hit that notification bell. And if you want more content from me, please subscribe. And if you have any questions, if you have any concerns about this movie, write me in the Discord. I would love to have a conversation with you. Let's talk about mental illness and how important it really is. And I'm glad that we have movies like this to talk about it. Till the next one. Peace.